When most Raza think of May Day, we think of marches, protest, and immigration reform. Most Raza fail to realize just what May Day is, how old the working man's holiday is, and that a Chicana was one of the leading figures sparking the birth of the May Day movement, who were fighting for the 8-hour workday. Welcome, homies, to the Outlaw News, home of the Cholo journalist, the voice of the Vato Loco. Today, we take a moment to drop some klecha and profile a badass Chicana, Lucy Parsons, who was a leading figure in the rise of the workers' rights movement and the May Day International Workers' Day, a working-class-inspired holiday. The Outlaw is not just going to say catching phrases about being Chicano, Raza, and allegedly pushing unity, while ordering a bowl of menudo. That's not klecha or positivity. It's just entertainment and poverty pimping at its finest, by some social media Chicano West Coast, Al Sharpton type Vato. Tell me, you cyber cholos know the famous Al Sharpton is an informant who told on notorious New York mobsters, plus implants himself into every black movement, tragic event, and grieving families, in order to spy on everybody, redirect, or mislead the social movements and organizations. Listen to Al Sharpton talk. He's loud and entertaining, words mean nothing, and loves soul food and menudo, sass. The Outlaw drops klecha for the purpose of developing identity and discovering Raza's past. That isn't all negative stereotypes, most often told by people who hold racist views of the class of people they write or speak about. So watcha, check this out, homes. Lucy E. Parsons, whose last name was Gonzalez before marriage, was a leading figure in American anarchism and the radical labor movement. She was a brave, outspoken Chicana, allegedly born to a half-black, half-Indian mother, who was, or had been a slave, and a Mexican father. She married Albert R. Parsons, who was a white radical. In 1873 the Parsons moved to Chicago. Soon, both Lucy and her husband Albert became involved in radical labor organizing. 13 years later, Lucy and her husband Albert Parsons rose to national attention. On May 4, 1886, at Chicago's Haymarket Square's alleged riot. It began as a peaceful rally in support of workers striking for an 8-hour workday, which started on May 1 at the McCormick factory. The next day, police killed one striker and injured several workers during a second strike. On the fourth day of strikes, thousands of workers gathered in Haymarket Square for a peaceful rally. An unknown person threw a dynamite bomb at the police as they attempted to disperse the meeting, and the bomb blast and ensuing gunfire resulted in the deaths of 1 police officers and at least 6 civilians. Dozens of others were wounded, including police. Albert Parsons, Lucy's husband, was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death for alleged role in the bombing at Haymarket Square. Lucy Parsons became the country's biggest outspoken radical, who confronted issues as government corruption, worker rights, women rights, and racial equality for Native Americans, Mexicans, and freed slaves. Her legacy as a radical activist began when she embarked on a speaking tour to raise money for her husband, who was one of 9 men tried and sentenced to be executed for speaking in such a way as to inspire the bomber to violence, basically on some conspiracy bullshit trumped-up charges. Lucy Parsons remained an outspoken activist after the execution of her beloved husband Albert Parsons, and in 1892, founded the newspaper named Freedom. In 1905, Parsons became the only woman to address the founding convention of the Industrial Workers of the World (IWW). Lucy Parsons died accidentally in a house fire in 1942. The Kansas City Journal, on December 21, 1886, published one of Lucy Parsons' speeches that read, "I am an anarchist. I suppose you came here, the most of you, to see what a real, live anarchist looked like. I suppose some of you expected to see me with a bomb in one hand and a flaming torch in the other, but are disappointed in seeing neither. If such has been your ideas regarding an anarchist, you deserve to be disappointed. Anarchists are peaceable, law-abiding people. What do anarchists mean when they speak of anarchy? Webster gives the term two definitions: chaos and a state of being without political rule. We cling to the latter definition. Our enemies hold that we believe only in the former. Do you wonder why there are anarchists in this country, in this great land of liberty, as you love to call it? Go to New York. Go through the byways and alleys of that great city. Count the many starving. Count the multiplied thousands who are homeless. Number those who work harder than slaves and live on less and have fewer comforts than the meanest slaves. You will be dumbfounded by your discoveries, you who have paid no attention to these poor, save as objects of charity and commiseration. They are not objects of charity, they are the victims of the rank injustice that permeates the system of government and of political economy that holds sway from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Its oppression, the misery it causes, the wretchedness it gives birth to, are found to a greater extent in New York than elsewhere. In New York, where not many days ago two governments united in unveiling a Statue of Liberty, where 100 bands played the hymn of liberty, the Marseillaise. But almost its equal is found among the miners of the West, who dwell in squalor and wear rags, that the capitalists, who control the earth that should be free to all, may add still further to their millions. Oh, there are plenty of reasons for the existence of anarchists. But in Chicago they do not think anarchists have any right to exist at all. They want to hang them there, lawfully or unlawfully. You have heard of a certain Haymarket meeting. You have heard of a bomb. You have heard of arrests and of succeeding arrests effected by detectives. Those detectives. There is a set of men, beasts for you. Pinkerton detectives. They would do anything. I feel sure capitalists wanted a man to throw that bomb at the Haymarket meeting and have the anarchists blamed for it. Pinkerton could have accomplished it for him. You have heard a great deal about bombs. You have heard that the anarchists said lots about dynamite. You have been told that Ling made bombs. He violated no law. Dynamite bombs can kill, can murder, so can Gatling guns. Suppose that bomb had been thrown by an anarchist. The Constitution says there are certain inalienable rights, among which are a free press, free speech and free assemblage. The citizens of this great land are given by the Constitution the right to repel the unlawful invasion of those rights. The meeting at Haymarket Square was a peaceful meeting. Suppose, when an anarchist saw the police arrive on the scene, with murder in their eyes, determined to break up that meeting, suppose he had thrown that bomb? He would have violated no law. That will be the verdict of your children. Had I been there, had I seen those murderous police approach, had I heard that insolent command to disperse, had I heard Fieldman say, "Captain, this is a peaceable meeting," had I seen the liberties of my countrymen trodden underfoot, I would have flung the bomb myself. I would have violated no law, but would have upheld the Constitution. If the anarchists had planned to destroy the city of Chicago and to massacre the police, why was it they had only 2 or 3 bombs in hand? Such was not their intention. It was a peaceful meeting. Carter Harrison, the mayor of Chicago, was there. He said it was a quiet meeting. He told Bonfield, Captain John Bonfield, commander of Des Plaines Police Station, to send the police to their different beats. I do not stand here to gloat over the murder of those policemen. I despise murder. But when a ball from the revolver of a policeman kills, it is as much murder as when death results from a bomb. The police rushed upon that meeting as it was about to disperse. Mr. Simonson talked to Bonfield about the meeting. Bonfield said he wanted to do the anarchists up. Parsons went to the meeting. He took his wife, 2 ladies and his 2 children along. Toward the close of the meeting, he said, "I believe it is going to rain. Let us adjourn to Zeff's Hall." Fieldman said he was about through with his speech and would close it at once. The people were beginning to scatter about. 1,000 of the more enthusiastic still lingered in spite of the rain. Parsons, and those who accompanied him, started for home. They had gone as far as the Des Plaines Street police station when they saw the police start at a double quick. Parsons stopped to see what was the trouble. Those 200 policemen rushed on to do the anarchists up. Then we went on. I was in Zeff's Hall when I heard that terrible detonation. It was heard around the world. Tyrants trembled and felt there was something wrong. The discovery of dynamite and its use by anarchists is a repetition of history. When gunpowder was discovered, The feudal system was at the height of its power. Its discovery and use made the middle classes. Its first discharge sounded the death knell of the feudal system. The bomb at Chicago sounded the downfall of the wage system of the 19th century. Why? Because I know no intelligent people will submit to despotism. The first means the diffusion of power. I tell no man to use it. But it was the achievement of science, not of anarchy, and would do for the masses. I suppose the press will say I belched forth treason. If I have violated any law, arrest me, give me a trial, and the proper punishment, but let the next anarchist that comes along ventilate his views without hindrance. Well, the bomb exploded, the arrests were made, and then came that great judicial farce, beginning on June 21st. The jury was impaneled. Is there a Knight of Labor here? Then know that a Knight of Labor was not considered competent enough to serve on that jury. Are you a Knight of Labor? Have you any sympathy with labor organizations? Were the questions asked each talisman? If an affirmative answer was given, the talisman was bounced. It was not "Are you a Mason, a Knight Templar?" Oh, no. I see you read the signs of the times by that expression. Hangman Gary, miscaled judge, ruled that if a man was prejudiced against the defendants, it did not incapacitate him from serving on the jury. For such a man, said Hangman Gary, would pay closer attention to the law and evidence and would be more apt to render a verdict for the defense. Is there a lawyer here? If there is, he knows such a ruling is without precedent and contrary to all law, reason, or common sense. In the heat of patriotism, the American citizen sometimes drops a tear for the nihilist of Russia. They say the nihilist can't get justice, that he's condemned without trial. How much more should he weep for his next-door neighbor, the anarchist, who is given the form of trial under such a ruling? There were squealers introduced as witnesses for the prosecution. There were 3 of them. Each and every one was compelled to admit they had been purchased and intimidated by the prosecution. Yet Hangman Gary held their evidence as competent. It came out in the trial that the Haymarket meeting was the result of no plot, but was caused in this wise. The day before the wage slaves in McCormick's factory had struck for 8 hours labor, McCormick, from his luxurious office, with one stroke of the pen by his idle, be-ringed fingers, turned 4,000 men out of employment. Some gathered and stoned the factory. Therefore they were anarchists, said the press. But anarchists are not fools. Only fools stone buildings. The police were sent out and they killed 6 wage slaves. You didn't know that. The capitalistic press kept it quiet, but it made a great fuss over the killing of some policemen. Then these crazy anarchists, as they are called, thought a meeting ought to be held to consider the killing of 6 brethren and to discuss the 8-hour movement. The meeting was held. It was peaceable. When Bonfield ordered the police to charge those peaceable anarchists, he hauled down the American flag and should have been shot on the spot. While the judicial farce was going on, the red and black flags were brought into court to prove that the anarchists threw the bomb. They were placed on the walls and hung there, awful specters before the jury. What does the black flag mean? When a cablegram says it was carried through the streets of a European city, it means that the people are suffering, that the men are out of work, the women starving, the children barefooted. But, you say, that is in Europe. How about America? The Chicago Tribune said there were 30,000 men in that city with nothing to do. Another authority said there were 10,000 barefooted children in midwinter. The police said hundreds had no place to sleep or warm. Then President Cleveland issued his Thanksgiving proclamation and the anarchists formed in procession and carried the black flag to show that these thousands had nothing for which to return thanks. When the Board of Trade, that gambling den, was dedicated by means of a banquet, $30 a plate, again the black flag was carried, to signify that there were thousands who couldn't enjoy a 2-cent meal. But the red flag, the horrible red flag, what does that mean? Not that the streets should run with gore, but that the same red blood courses through the veins of the whole human race. It meant the brotherhood of man. When the red flag floats over the world, the idle shall be called to work. There will be an end of prostitution for women, of slavery for men, of hunger for children. Liberty has been named anarchy. If this verdict is carried out, it will be the death knell of America's liberty. You and your children will be slaves. You will have liberty if you can pay for it. If this verdict is carried out, place the flag of our country at half-mast and write on every fold shame. Let our flag be trailed in the dust. Let the children of workingmen place laurels to the brow of these modern heroes, for they committed no crime. Break the two-fold yoke. Bread is freedom, and freedom is bread.